Anybody listening to this or watching it ought to really think through. You love your family. It's really easy to say, hey, sweetheart, you can be anything you want to be. But there's a point in most children's lives where they wonder, well, why aren't you? And at some point, all of us, true, like I figured out who my dad is in writing this book, right? I figured, at some point in my adulthood, I figured out who he was, who my mother was, how my mother's the lost person. She's just this beautiful person who literally held our family together when it wasn't, almost capable of being held together. But I have to tell you, all children eventually figure out who their parents are in the world. You're going to love your parents, but there's an age where you figure out, who are they? What difference have they made? What have they achieved? What have they given? What's their role in the world? And so all of your children are going to eventually figure that out anyway. So you might as well go for your dreams now. And there's another notion, I'll just say lastly, this notion that, well, if I'm really crushing it at work, I'm going to be neglecting my family. Or if I'm really, if I'm at the gym, that's going to take from work. The truth is, I talk about this in the book about, extremity expands capacity. And the truth is that nothing's further, that's absolutely not true. For me, when I'm crushing it at work, I'm a better dad. When I'm a great father, I bring more love and compassion and joy and energy to work. When I'm fit and training and eating great, that magnifies positively all the other areas. There's this fallacy that if you have a lot of one, you must have less of the other. And that's just not true.
In preparing for today, I am not taking a second of everyone listening and their precious time for granted. And you don't know this, but I've reached out to a number of your close friends, asking them, what would you ask Ed?
Oh, no.
I have
Wow,
reached out, and a lot of people on Instagram DMing me questions for you. And, this was going to come later, but I just want to throw this out there because it's something that you just shared. So a lot of your community sending me questions, right? So at Eclipse Holsters asked, and I want to share this because it piggybacks on something you just shared. How do you handle your family that doesn't necessarily want you to succeed because they're more comfortable if you stay stuck and poor like them? How do you walk in your success and enjoy it? And so I think that's interesting because you're saying your kids will figure out who you are and really, really go for it. And a lot of people are struggling because maybe their parents, their loved ones, their friends and family actually kind of prefer if they just stay stuck.
Yeah, mine did. And, I could tell you on the other side of it, they loved me. Most of the time, they truly love you. They're very concerned about you. And let's be honest, if you're an entrepreneur, there's a lot of struggle. And most parents don't want to see their children hurt. They don't want to see you go through difficult times. Then there's the other part of it where they're like, oh, you're all after the money thing, or, what's important is family. And what they fail to understand because of their own limiting beliefs. Here's what's going to happen in your life. People with limiting beliefs are going to be projecting onto you their belief systems over and over and over and again. And as long as you are aware that that's what's happening, that it's not look, there's probably some folks in your family that are antagonistic against you, but the vast majority love you. They love you. They're projecting onto you their limiting belief systems. Here's what I can tell you that I know for a fact. That when you win, and I talk a lot about this in the book, the second chapter's about the Matrix, and I talk about Neo, and Neo in the Matrix is the one. And that I'm well known for saying that, that you can become the one in your family that changes the happiness and success level. Because in every family that you see that's wealthy or just happy, at some point in their lineage, way, way back, they weren't. And then the one shows up, the Neo, the Jamie in that family shows up. And here's what I can tell you, having been a person who sort of has been the one, is that you actually change the way they think eventually. And that my family now embraces bigger thinking. My family now embraces chasing dreams and maximizing your potential. It took a while, took a couple decades, but that type of talk will not happen in my family again. And so the fact that that's happening to you in your family makes it even more requisite upon you to go do something great so that that legacy of limiting thinking and small thinking and playing life small and settling for, listen, it's not just good enough to be a good person in life. You're supposed to contribute. You're supposed to make a difference. You were born to make a difference in your life. And so, yeah, a ticket into the game is being a good human. A ticket into the game is being kind and caring, which is pretty rare nowadays. So that's a ticket into the stadium. But then you got to get on the field and play. And to play the game is what life's all about. We were put here to play the game. And I can tell you that on the other side of it, here's the great news. Your family won't think that way anymore when you're done. My family doesn't think like that anymore. My nephews, my nieces, my sisters, my mom, my family, they don't think like that anymore. They get it. And so I not only changed the financial dynamic of my family, I changed our emotions. I changed the way we think. And by the way, I would say that had my dad not made the decisions he made, I would have never been in a position. The sacrifices he made allowed me to be the one. And so the other thing, lastly, I'd say is a lot of you have beautiful souls in your family who have sacrificed so much for you. It's incumbent upon you now to rise up and to become that one that finishes the game, finishes the job. Some of you come from families with legacies of real tragedy in your family, or maybe you're born into a dynamic where your entire race has been victimized most of the generations of your existence, and you have ancestors that have sacrificed for you. I don't have that history, but many of you do. Man, you got to do something great and honor them and take it to the next level and honor those sacrifices they made. And so it'll change the way they think eventually.
And you are so generous with how vulnerable you are and how transparent you are with everyone in your community out of a pure heart of service. I think so many people connect, millions of people who connect to you, see different parts of their story through yours, and maybe are inspired to navigate their own journey through how you navigate yours in different twists and turns. And so I want to just dive in for a minute and talk about a few things that I think, some of them I know you've never shared before, so this is going to be fun. But I'm going to start with sharing some of your words. So you said this quote: "You have it within you. I'm no different than you. I wasn't born with some magic gene that you don't have. I just wanted to win so bad that I didn't allow anyone or anything to steal my dreams. Procrastination is a thief, and fear is a liar." Whew. So first question on that is, growing up, what were your greatest fears?
I had so many. It's really weird as you're asking that, I was starting to actually get emotional. Because I was picturing me as a little guy. And it's just dawning on me how scared I always was. You know? All the time. So I was afraid my dad was going to leave. I was afraid he was going to get hurt or killed or hurt us sometimes. And the idea of fear was around me all the time. So just going to school afraid I'd embarrass myself. No one would know this because I had this pretty good mask I could kind of put on where, I don't know why it makes me so, I mean, it's bizarre right now. It's just, if I'm being real about what I'm thinking right now, I'm going to tell you what I'm thinking. I'm actually thinking I still am. I'm actually thinking I still am. So, and I don't know that, I was afraid of everything. So I was afraid of being a failure. I was afraid of letting people down. I was afraid my family wasn't going to exist. I was afraid people would figure out who I was and that I wasn't that special, figure out how average I was. When I even had success, like when I played baseball, I'd have this fear that it was a fluke. I still have a lot of that to this day where I'm like, it's a fluke. They're going to figure me out eventually. They're going to figure out I'm not that big of a deal. So I think that, now I will say that I think those of you that are like, wow, relating to that a little bit, I think not all emotions are negative or positive. Some fear is healthy. Some fear causes us to focus. Some fear causes us to make our best effort, right? We were given fear back in the caveman days so that T-Rex didn't eat us, right? So there's some fear, but to be riddled with it all the time. And I think I'm still a little bit of that guy. I think I still have a lot of it. So I had lots of fear. I had a lot of chaos. I realized as I got older, and by the way, I talk about in the book that you have an emotional home, that you have these 3 or 4 or 5 emotions you get on a really regular basis. And it's just, the reason I get emotional talking about it right now, and I've never said what I just said out loud, ever. Not to my wife, not to you, not to anybody, not to myself, is that even though I've worked really hard on taking an inventory of what emotions I want peace, I want joy, I want ecstasy, I want happiness, and I've really got a lot of those. Like, I really have intentionally given myself the gift of those emotions. The one that I've not ridded myself of regularly is fear. I'm still afraid. I'm afraid the book's not going to be successful. I'm afraid my podcast isn't going to do well. I'm afraid my speech isn't going to go well. And so the truth is, I still have a lot of that. And that's a good thing at 51 years old to say, hey, there's still room for me to improve. There's still things I got to work on. And I don't want anybody that follows my stuff all the time or me to think, oh, he's got every single thing figured out. The truth is, as I'm talking to you, I'm realizing even a little bit more, not realizing I was going to say this at all today, but that's still a thing I got to really address, is fear.